Welcome back, everybody, to DissedMedia, a startup story, the podcast where we take you behind the scenes of starting a business from the ground up. And today we're going to get into a little bit of a conversation around confidence, because one of the things that business leaders need, and you all know from listening to this podcast, our mantra is to help managers, leaders, and entrepreneurs get better at what they do. And a lot of times we talk about that in the context of business itself, sales, SEO optimization, marketing, how to manage, how to lead, how to coach. Today, we're going to focus a little bit on ourselves, and we're going to talk about ways that we can improve our own selves to be better for the people who we serve. And today we have a wonderful guest joining us, somebody who is an expert in this space. She is a TEDx speaker, has focused on leadership strategy, a best-selling author, and has worked with thousands of professionals on their skills to improve themselves. She has a PhD in health economics and hosts the Happy Healthy Hustle podcast. Along with that, she has a wonderful TEDx out there that you all can check out that helps to improve one's system around small actions and how they help build lasting momentum. Welcome to the podcast today, Dr. Christiane Schroeter.
Thanks, Ben, for having me. And audience, I'm really excited to be here. Confidence, certainly always an important topic. And I'm going to give you some really good tips and strategies here today on how to improve your confidence.
That is awesome, because I think we've talked about this before in previous episodes, that running a business can be tough. And one of the things that we try to do here is make business information accessible. One of the easiest things to do is start a business. The hard thing to do is to make it profitable. But there's a lot about starting a business that people kind of lose confidence over. And so I'm excited to get into some of this today, because a lot of what you focus on seems to be kind of taking smaller steps to change, and not looking at change as this big monumental task to achieve all at once. I like to, before we get into it though, if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about your backstory, like your origin story, if you will, and how all of it brought you to what you do today.
Yeah. So you can hear from my accent, I'm born in Germany. So I definitely do appreciate that structure and organization that so many of us associate with German origins. And then, of course, I also have a trademark on a concept called Petite Practice. So if you watch that TEDx talk, I will elaborate on what that exactly is. But that means I am multilingual. So I speak German as my mother language. I learned French early on. I spent a lot of time in France. And now I live in the United States. I actually live in California, where I'm a professor at the university. I teach marketing, sales, entrepreneurship, and innovation. And that means I see the students from the ground up, how they start their confidence and really get their companies going with that confidence.
I happen to be in academia myself. It's something that I've been doing for a number of years. So I think probably a lot of the content that we teach probably crosses paths in many ways.
Love it.
But one of the things that I love about your background and your specialty is you really kind of have this focus on health and well-being. Tell me a little bit about the work that you do and the work that you've done with other executives.
I think that frequently when we start a business, we become so focused on getting the business off the ground that we tend to forget that the most important thing is the person behind the business, which is us, right? Most of the time, solopreneurs at the beginning, they just put all the energy into the business and think the more hours they put in, the more energy they spend on it, the more likely the business will take off. But think a little bit about this way. So you really can't pour from a cup that's draining. You kind of have to take care of yourself. And the more actually you pour your energy into yourself, the more your audience is going to notice that you're just getting yourself first in the correct place, that is like mental space, but then also physical space, and then your startup and your business is actually representing really somebody that's taking care of themselves. Because especially I work a lot with students that, for instance, create protein bars or energy shakes. You can't really do a very good job in talking about your product if you seem completely depleted, especially if it's a health and wellness product. People will quickly figure out that you are pouring so much of your energy into that startup that they are actually starting to doubt whether that product does a really good job. So I think the health and wellness piece, no matter what you do, is most important if you take care of yourself first.
And I think one of the things that has, I have to credit this up and coming generation coming into the workplace because, they seem to have prioritized mental health and internal well being over, I think, some previous generations that have, kind of focused more on work hard, don't complain, don't, no such thing as burnout, kind of stuff. And, while that can help us achieve a lot of things, it can also create a lot of downstream negative effects, not just for ourselves, but for the people around us as well. Um, thinking about that, one of the things that I found that was really interesting about your work is this work that you've done around the Petite Practice framework. Can you share a little bit more about that and what that entails?
Yeah, so petite is the French word for small, and practice just means that you're taking a small step towards your big goal. So think about small steps taken consistently will reach your big goal much quicker than taking one big chunk out once at a time. So if you, for instance, over the course of the week, every day work an hour on your big idea, at the end of that week, you put in 7 hours. While it's much healthier to do that compared to just sitting down one day and then trying to crank out 7 hours to work on this big idea. Because I'm sure over the course of those 7 hours, your mind is going to drift, you're going to get sidetracked, you're not going to be as efficient. But really blocking 1 hour per day and then consistently putting that time towards your big idea is really the idea of a petite practice. It's consistent, small steps. And what's really important about it, at the end of that 1 week, the 7 hours that you put in, the difference between, say, an atomic habit and a petite practice is that you actually take some time to reflect. So you examine over the course of this 1 week what worked really well for me. Where is it that I felt the most productive? What really is efficient for me? And then you use those techniques that worked well in moving into the next week. So it is this intentional, reflective, pausing, reflection, examination that a petite practice really has. And then you're using those strategies to keep moving on. Because sometimes in our business, all what we think about is moving forward, but it is really the pause and reflection that is so important in a PT practice to be the most efficient selves that we can be.
As you say that, it reminds me of gosh, I wish I could remember who this is to credit them properly, but making 1% changes, just kind of focusing not necessarily on making massive efforts, but just being 1% better a week, or 1% better even a day, and then as you build upon that, you can look back and you're further along, you're improved. But something I sometimes hear from people is, yeah, but how do you get started? Right? It's one thing to say, do it for an hour a day, but maybe the first couple days is easy. Come day 4 or 5, it gets a little tougher. And one of the things I recall hearing you say is that this whole idea of there's a fixed period of time where new habits are formed, and then all of a sudden you're different and you're changed, like that's a little outside of scope. So yeah, how do you help people get through that? How do you help people stay on task?
Oh, this is a great question. So while I use the example of the 1 hour, the beautiful thing is it doesn't even have to be an hour. In fact, I always encourage my clients choose the very smallest amount of time you could spend on your project. Because the whole thing of I don't have time, I'm sure you have 5 minutes during the day. So maybe it's just going to be 5 minutes every single day over the course of that week. And that means you choose the amount of time that you feel works and that you feel you can dedicate consistently. And if it's 5 minutes, I'll take it. So that is really something that you, at the end of the day, are in complete control about how much time you have to dedicate. But I always then say, all right, then show me. I want to see the calendar. Did you schedule it consistently? Did you actually put that in? Because at the beginning, you have to get used to, all right, where am I going to spend these 5 minutes? When am I going to do this, right? And that is really the idea of the petite practice. Choose the smallest amount of time, the smallest thing that you could do. And that momentum on the second day, when you feel, that's true, yesterday I worked on this. And then on the third day, feeling, I'm really picking things up here. I already worked 2 days on this. So that's that feel good moment that you use to keep jumping from petite practice to petite practice from day to day and really pick it up. And who says that in the second or third week, you can't make the 5 minutes 10 minutes? Or maybe you stick to the 5 minutes and it just works for you. So it is really just you figure out what works for you. And that is something that is so important. There's no recipe that says it has to be an hour or anything like that. But what I really feel with my clients is that they really appreciate the consistency of it.
As you were explaining that, I was thinking, I think something that helps is like I'm kind of a list person. When I get overwhelmed, I make a list, but also when I have a lot of things I want to accomplish, I make a list. But maybe also in these periods of as you're building these better habits and better ways of doing things, just write down what you accomplished toward the task that you're trying to create. It's funny, we talk about even if it's 5 minutes, like how do you quantify that at the end of the week? How do you look back at it and say, I made progress, or gosh, I should have done more on it, and keep that keep it out of us trying to remember it in our head. Like, do you have any strategies to help people not necessarily keep it all in their head?
Yeah, beautiful. And I love the thing with the list. So let's say you write things on your to-do list. Let's call it your to-do list. And you can even break down the items on your to-do list into a more granular item. So maybe you have apply for a business license. And even that you can break down into smaller steps. Okay, state business license, is it regional business license, anything like that. So you have your to-do list. Then we have a second list, and we're going to call it the ta-da list. So every time you did something on your to-do list, you can move that item over to your ta-da list, like celebrating those small wins, really praising the momentum. And that means I would encourage you at the end of the day, always think about what is the small win? What was a really small incremental little celebration that I should give myself a high five for that I did today from my to-do list? And you don't have to accomplish all of it, just one small thing that you accomplished, and then write that on your to-do list, because sometimes you feel like, I really didn't do anything today. Did you really? No, let's take another look. And then all of a sudden you realize there's more than you accomplished. It's just that your initial to-do list was just so long, there's no way you could have accomplished all of it. So as soon as you start moving things to your to-do list, that is really when you start picking up that momentum. And what I also feel is that the momentum is what keeps you going, but it also allows you to reflect, all right, what really worked here? Is there like a certain pattern? Am I more productive in the morning? Am I maybe productive after I take a walk? So really like kind of like this, like taking this internal introspective look into your own productivity and your working patterns is what makes this so effective. That you don't just write down things you have to do, but things that you did, and also focus a little bit in like, how did you do them? When did you do them? And what made them so successful? That is really when I see the most momentum.
So you also kind of mentioned this framework called STEP. right?
Yep.
So how does step play into all of this?
So the beautiful thing, and when you watch my TED talk, is that I'm like a firm believer in acronyms, right? So STEP, and we talked about petite practice. Petite practice in itself is a small step. But I would encourage you to use this step framework even yourself. So, starting with S for simplifying tasks. We tend to overthink. And for me, it helps sometimes to write down the task on a whiteboard or whatever, but then really breaking it down and simplifying it and thinking a little bit, all right, so what is like the one thing, the least resistant that I could take today? And then I start with that because I choose something from the list and then I will get started with that one. Okay, I will get started with that one. So that's my simplification. It's my S for simplification. And then, secondly, I have to tell somebody about it. And even if it's just a person while I'm standing at a coffee shop in line, or it's my neighbor, or it's my husband, or it's my children, once I take that first task, I have to be accountable for the fact that I got started with a project. So, first I simplify, I take the task, then I tell, and then the third one, the E, is for I have to examine what is really going on. How is this working for you? And it's completely fair if you feel you need to readjust course, because keep in mind, your petite practice is so small that you can always course correct because we only took a small step and it's a practice. You can give yourself permission to fail because it was just your first attempt in learning, right? So your petite practice on the second day, if you're like, it didn't really work, right? Just course correct, right? So we simplified, we told somebody, we examined, then P, praise for your project. So you have to praise your progress. And that's the most important step because then you can start again from the beginning. Take the next one, simplify it, tell, examine, praise. And if you think about that flywheel, that is really how you're going to pick up productivity and momentum.
I love that because there's an element of accountability, right? When you tell somebody, you're informing others what your intentions are, and they're probably going to come back and check in on you to see if you accomplish that, right? So it kind of puts a little bit of outward accountability on the things that you're trying to do. And then, of course, the praise. One of the things they talk about, you're probably familiar with Martin Seligman and positive psychology movement. So the PERMA model. And at the end of the PERMA model is accomplishment, right? And we want to find ways to reinforce the things we're doing by celebrating the accomplishments, right? So just acknowledging, and by the way, sometimes even acknowledging the fact that maybe we didn't complete it, I don't want to necessarily say uh it fully falls into that praise category, but it does help to acknowledge the things we didn't complete just as well.
Completely agree with you. So let me give you an example, for instance, right? So I'm part of a book club. And in my book club, we choose books. And sometimes people feel to be part of a club, a book club, you have to finish the book. And sometimes people just don't like the book. And you know what? Yay, you for trying it. If you don't like it, then just don't finish it. I mean, at the end of the day, think about how much time you will spend reading something that you truly don't enjoy. So, the whole thing about the petite practice, and that's why I love this French name, is like you have to have fun with it too. If you do something that you truly don't enjoy, that is not the right thing to do because you don't want to feel like, oh, here I go. I have to do this. This is not if you're like internally resisting that small step, it's already a signal that something is not right. It's not lining up your internal motivation and your external signal. So if you, for instance, read a book that you don't like, I always say, I give you permission, you can stop it, right? And in your health and wellness, it's just the same thing. Because I work with people in improving their health and wellness, I always tell them if you pick up a workout, it's hard at the beginning. But if you truly never have fun, where you don't walk away and you think, I'm feeling better because I did the workout, then we need to rethink about the workout, because not everybody loves every workout, right? Some people really resonate with cardio, some people resonate with yoga, some people resonate with something completely different. So you also have to do this examination and really give yourself permission. You can stop if you don't like it, it's completely fine, but you also have to pick up something else. So simplify the next one and pick it up. So you can't just be like, well, workouts are just not for me. That doesn't work this way, right? So you have to move your body, but just choose a different one.
When I was growing up, it seemed like there was a very fixed model that people had in their head about what led to success, right? So it was kind of like finish high school, go on to college, get a degree, get a job with a big company, and then you'll be set. And somewhere along the line over the last 30 years, that has just changed significantly. And no more is there really this kind of prescribed model for success. The success really comes in a lot of different forms and fashions. There's so many options for how to be successful, in this environment we're in today. And, it doesn't have to be this intended model that I think a lot of people kind of have in their head as to what is going to lead to the greatest amount of success. And then first and foremost, how are we defining success in the first place? Because it means something different to everyone, right? So just having your own kind of foundation for what you believe is successful for you. And so what if it's not everybody's definition of success, right? It's your definition. And if it makes you happy, you're probably further along than many people are who are trying to follow that old model and old way of doing things.
Love it. I love that definition. And I just talked about that with my two daughters, who right now are high schoolers and looking at education in terms of higher education. Should I go to college? Should I not go to college? And because I'm a college professor myself, I'm not going to force them, A, to attend college, or B, study certain things. Because the more pressure you put on somebody, the less they want to do that, right?
Yeah.
Because you're going to be telling them what they do. And remember what we just talked about with the Petite Practice. I can lay out goals all day long for you, but you have to be the one that chooses your first small step. So if I tell them, look, there are these different majors at the university, and there are these different things you could do if you don't want to go to the university, but you choose the first step. And I'm going to give you time, but you have to make that choice. That is the way to go. Because otherwise, if you're like, well, I wanted you to go to the university and I wanted you to study this, it's not the choice. And you always want to be feeling like you are the agent of your decisions, especially something as important as your career, right? So I let them choose that themselves. And I always think it's like a pinball machine, but there's a lot of different paths of reaching your goal, right? You can go right, you can go left, you can go straight up. It doesn't matter. It's just that all of us need to actually kick the ball somehow. You can just be idle. So
Yeah.
I would say, whatever you do, right? You can think about it, but by that time, we're going to make a decision. And by that time, we're actually going to kick the ball somewhere. So I'm going to let you think about this. I'm going to let you evaluate it. You can talk to other people, but then we're going to make a decision and we're going to take that first step. And if it doesn't work, right, if that ball doesn't go immediately towards the goal, that's cool too. I mean, I'm not an expert at shooting balls into a pinball machine either. Like sometimes it takes a few tries, right? And that's all right. We just keep trying again.
I often, I tell my kids, I have two girls, and they're older now, but I want them to have a good work ethic. I want them to be curious, and I want them to, pour themselves into things that they're interested in doing, and learn how to maximize that. Um, primarily because I always tell this story to my students. They get a kick out of it. I say, I wasn't the best student in school. I said, I passed all my classes on the way to my car, because going through high school, that was kind of my approach to school. It was a little boring for me. I didn't go to college until really until I started working full time, like in a career working. I'd been working since I was a kid, but once I got a job at a real company, that's when I finally decided to go back to school. Um, so, but my going all the way to getting a PhD was entirely driven by me. Like nobody told me I had to do it, and none of my employers demanded it. It's just I got to the point where I wanted to do it.
Mhm.
And because of that, it just meant so much more to me. There was so much more drive behind it. But if somebody told me I had to do it, I probably never would have done it.
Completely
I
agree
think
with
that's just an important part of focusing on the things you enjoy doing.
completely agree with you. And I think especially with a PhD, what I noticed is there's a difference between why are you doing this, right? Is it the status? Is it the prestige? Or is it truly because you care about making the world a better place? Which I hope it's mostly, the last one for a lot of people. Um, I think that sometimes we we have actually more strength and more resilience than what we give ourselves credit for. And we can accomplish so many things, but we just have to tap into this, what I call superpower, right? So we all are able to accomplish great things, but what that great thing is, nobody really knows. You have to figure this out yourself, right? And that's, I think, so important, especially, I have two daughters too, just like you. We have a lot in common, actually. And so I kind of let them figure things out. It's nearly like, you're playing with Lego pieces. And I like the boxes of the Lego pieces minus instructions, right? Because it allows you to just to be creative and really tap into like, all right, am I going to build a house? Am I going to build this? Is it going to be a car? And then you can kind of like see, oh, how is this all developing? Is it like maybe something totally abstract, right? There's really no rhyme or reason why they would need to build a certain thing because they are just building their own future and they are hopefully, figuring out what gives them joy. And I always tell them too, work is work, but at the end of the day, you have to feel like you are fulfilling something that feel like you're helping others.
Yeah,
You're
it's got to have some
becoming
purpose to it.
yeah, you're an entrepreneur because your primary goal is you want to help others. You're not an entrepreneur because you try to maximize your profits. That's not the goal here, right? And it's just like if you start a company, most of the time you're starting a company because there's something in your life that you really struggled with, and you looked at this problem as an opportunity that others are probably struggling with it as well. So why don't I make this product or service that can help others that have the same issue? And that is really frequently what we don't really see in life, that an obstacle becomes an opportunity. And those are the best entrepreneurs that make that connection right there. So frequently, the people that fail and struggle all of a sudden come back and say, I'm so glad I failed because what I learned during that time of failure, during that time of struggle, became actually the best version of myself and became the driver of who I am today.
Yeah, I would. I am one who fully embraces the fail side of things. So much we learn from it. So many new things come out of it. One of the things I wanted to ask you, so your concentration, your field of study is in health economics, which is kind of interesting. I've always kind of loved economics from a like behavioral economics and things like that, but I'm a little uninformed on health economics. Can you share a little bit about that and what that field kind of entails?
Mhm. So if you think of economics as like you're maximizing, say, your utility, your well-being, subject to some budget constraint, right? The income that you have. In health economics, you're trying to maximize your well-being, but subject to, say, a calorie constraint, like the food intake that you have. So the model that I built in my dissertation, I basically looked at, what if over the course of a year, we are changing our food intake by a petite practice by a small incremental amount. We're looking how much does that calorie savings actually over the course of a year translate into kilogram savings, or if you want to translate into BMI changes. So I basically translated, what if you don't drink that regular sugar sweetened Coca-Cola drink per day or whatever sugar sweetened soft drink? How much does it really translate over the course of a year into a savings with regard to your body weight? And if you now remember, we just started talking about the Petite Practice. It is truly the exact same principle. You don't need to do drastic changes in your life if you want to improve your health. Just maybe cutting out that one soft drink per day over the course of a frequent time, if you drink one per day or maybe even one per year, you're going to see big changes because it's kind of like you're compounding this over time, and you're not even making an uncomfortable change in your life. You're just maybe switching from a regular sugar sweetened beverage to an unsweetened beverage. So that was the essence of my dissertation. And actually, I won the Best Dissertation Award at Purdue University, where I earned my PhD, because it was so fundamentally different from what a lot of people thought about health and wellness, where they thought, well, it's like this big drastic change. There's like a lot of, sacrificing we need to do in our life. And it feels like we need to starving our body. We need to work out every day. And it's truly not what I showed. I really showed that the small incremental changes are truly what make the big difference, because those are the ones that actually stick under times of pressure.
One of the things that I've been doing over the last little bit now is advising doctoral students who are in pursuit of their own PhDs now. And, the one thing I always come back to is, don't write this paper. Like, don't do this research because you're trying to get a degree. Like, focus on something you're truly curious about, truly interested in, because if you're writing from a place of passion and interest, it just makes the whole process, it's already arduous and a little, grueling, but it makes it a little easier to get through. Because you will get feedback. You will do a lot of writing and rewriting and revisions and things like that. So you might as well make it interesting if you're gonna, keep at it. But that is really interesting stuff, because I was kind of wondering, like, how does health and economics blend? I mean, I kind of get it from a business standpoint, but it's a very interesting blend kind of what am I trying to say? Disciplines would probably be the word.
Yeah. So if you think about like an economic model that shows, what if I save $1 per day? How much do I have at the end of the year? And even like have interest rates thrown in there and some other external factors, right? That is in essence what I did with calories. I call it like calorie counting sounds really lame, right? I called it calorie accounting. So building a model that really shows calories in, calories out, what happens if I have some external factors going on with there. And that at the end of the day then came to this fantastic, super complicated model that I use. Even like when I explain things now to my students, I use this all the time, where I basically tell them it's the small incremental change, but you have to keep going at it because you're going to see big results over time.
It's like a compounding interest, but on a positive side, on a
Yeah.
healthy side.
Yeah, I mean, think about it yourself, right? Nobody wants to do a diet because alone the name sounds like you are leading a life without any
You're
joy,
punishing yourself in some manner.
punishing. But if you think about what I just mentioned earlier, like maybe cutting out one drink or one food item per day, or maybe even just reducing it, maybe not even eliminating it altogether, just reducing it, you're going to see big changes over time because your body gets used to it. And then over time, it doesn't even sound good anymore. But you can also do it the other way. Adding is always easier than subtracting. You could even say, all right, I don't eat enough fruits and vegetables per day. I don't know what to do. Well, just add one per day. And that even compounds to eating more fruits and vegetables over the course of a year. And that is really, in essence, what it comes down to, right? So to me, it's always, and I love that you brought up the passion right there. You kind of have to think a little bit about it. what is it really that helped me? And what is it really how I lead my life? Because when you talk about it, other people will pick up on this. So when I talk about my health and wellness, and because I work as a fitness instructor too, I always think it's so important that you tie in what you write about, what you research with something that you yourself, again, your superpower, what you really incorporate, what you exude in terms of your energy.
So let me ask you this because you have a podcast as well,
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
happy healthy hustle. I always gotta pause a moment because it's a little bit of a
Yeah.
tongue twister for me.
Oh, yeah.
But with your podcast, what are some of the things that you get into? I imagine some of
Mhm.
these topics, but what else?
Yeah, so the latest video that we just posted yesterday, for instance, talked about my books. I read a book per week, like speaking about Petite Practice. And I talked about how Atomic Habits is different from Petite Practice, that we actually kind of need both. And then I even like talk about leadership topics because I'm a leadership strategist, but at the end of the day, nobody really tells you, oh, this is what you have to be a good leader. And so I talk about certain items that you can maybe pick up or certain traits and characteristics that will improve your leadership strategy and your leadership skills. And then of course I have guests on there as well. I mean, it's just like being a good parent. I also try to be a good coach and try to bring in other perspectives so that people understand, oh, this is what helped them reach their superpower. So I can share with them what helped me, but how about hearing from somebody else what helped them? Because I think that we always take a little bit away from different perspectives, right? It's like you're looking at an appetizer plate and you're like, oh, I like this here and I like that there. So I have guests as well, and I interview them and ask them, what do you think is your superpower? And what was the biggest point in your life where you really struggled? And what or who helped you overcome it? And my students and my clients always say they really appreciate the diverse perspectives that I bring into my podcast.
So out of curiosity, this is going to sound a little bit like Sophie's Choice. We got to pick our favorite child here, but is there someone that left a real lasting impression on you in your podcast that you still kind of reflect upon today?
Yeah, so I had a guest, and I would encourage the audience to actually check it out. So Quinn Magnuson, he lives in Canada, and the audience this is a truly magnificent story. I was teaching a workout class, and he happened to tour my university and noticed me walking into the room where I'm teaching my workout class. And he called behind me and said, oh my gosh, it's Christiane. And I said, oh my gosh, it's Quinn. And I had been a guest on his podcast before. So on that day, him being here from Canada in California, I said, why don't we record a podcast on the next day? And I think it was just all meant to be. So he came over to my house. We recorded a podcast. And I think that one is a pretty magic recording. So I would encourage you to listen to it because he uses the concept effort over results, right? So, how can you put in effort, but you don't always have to necessarily think about like, oh, it's leading to like these big outcomes right there. It's just the effort that you put in that matters much more because you tried and you really went for it. That it's not always necessarily leading to like these big outcomes, but it's really you went for it, and that it matters so much more in life. And he also walked away from a really big career to start his company because he really cared about his family and realized that he just worked himself so many hours that he didn't care. Like, I'm not going to do that for the rest of my life. I want to spend more time with my friends and family. So I would encourage you, audience, this is really a very, I would say, emotional but also a very strong episode in terms of learning from a leader that started his own company, has his own podcast, and is getting ready to publish his own book now.
I will definitely give it a listen because I like even in this podcast, I've had the opportunity to meet, talk to a lot of different people. And, the number of people I've encountered who kind of worked towards a career, went down a path. As a matter of fact, just yesterday, I did an interview with with a couple who were thriving in their professions and then decided to sell everything,
Mhm.
travel around the world, and they were going to figure out what they wanted to do next. So they started on this path of traveling. They came across a spa in Poland where it was a spa slash beer, and they thought, wow, what a unique concept. And so they came back to the US. They moved to Denver, Colorado, had never even been to Denver before, and opened up a spa, a beer, I don't want to call it a beer spa, but basically a spa that also serves beer. And just incredible. Like it took them 2 years to build this thing out, and now they're booked solid. They're opening up more than one location. They're starting to franchise. I mean, it's just turned into this whole thing. But they got there by ditching it all and going on a journey around the world. It's pretty neat. I love when people kind of take these opportunities to transform that way.
Oh, completely. And I think that's a beautiful story because sometimes we feel we are so restricted by what we can do. Where in reality, I mean, remember what I just talked about with regard to the books that I read, but you can pretty much think about your brain as like responding to all these external signals. The books that you read, the people you interact with, the geographic locations you are at. So it's like this neuroplasticity that you can think, all right, I can shape my own future. I'm totally in charge of my life and my decision, my career, and where I'm going to go. And I think that's sometimes we underestimate that how much you are really in charge of your future decisions, of your future career, of where you end up at. I mean, like look at me. I came, from Germany with 2 suitcases to United States. I really had no plan of like staying for my PhD. It just happened to be that way that I enjoyed it so much. And now I'm a professor in California. Was that always my plan? No. But I think you just have to keep an open mind and then move with the flow and figure out, all right, so this is really something I enjoy. So I want more of that. And kind of like think about those petite practice steps as like little rocks in a river that you cross, the river of your life, right? Okay, so this is something I enjoy. And looking back, this is something maybe I didn't like so much. So I'm going to do more of this, what I enjoy. And so that's really how I built my career too. And I thought, well, I mean, I'm just going to keep doing more of that. Podcasting, love that. Writing books, enjoy that. And I think that's really how frequently we need to build our lives, that you just kind of like try to figure out what is it really that gives me most fulfillment? What is it really that my superpower is?
Well, let me ask you this, because we've mentioned superpower a couple times,
Mhm.
and you actually have a free superpower scorecard quiz that people can use to try and discover that within themselves. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so the scorecard shows you how aligned are you with your superpower, how well do you know yourself? And it guides you through. It's quite fun. 10 simple questions, and at the end you get a score that shows you how much do you really know yourself. And it's kind of, a one way for you to figure out, maybe instead of always filling the cup of others, maybe I need to do more and work on my own fulfillment and tap into my own superpower.
Well, Christiana, I appreciate greatly the wisdom, the insight that you shared with us. I love this work. I love the stuff that you're doing. Like I said when we started this thing out, I think it's really important that people understand, kind of what their strengths are. The better we're focused on what we know how to do for ourselves, the better tapped in we are to our own strengths. The better we're able to, do not just for ourselves but for those around us. So I love the fact that you focus on this and bring a lot of that stuff to light. And for everybody checking out the podcast, thank you so much. And as I always say, the algorithms like it when you like us. So tell your mom, tell your dad, tell your friends and family. Most of all, tell your enemies because, as I say, they're the ones going to take action on your words. So let everybody know. And if you want to check out my book, please look up 10 topics to help managers, leaders, and entrepreneurs get better at what you do. available on our website as well as Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Thank you all very much for checking out the show. We'll see you again next time, very shortly. Another one coming at you soon. Until then, have a good one. Thanks for listening to DissedMedia, A Startup Story. This podcast was produced and edited by Ben Olmos and is a production of DissedMedia Corporation. If you're interested in learning more about anything you heard on this episode, please reach out to us at podcast@dissedmedia.com. You can also get more information about this and other episodes or information about our guests by checking out dailypitch.news, our business and insights publication focused on helping managers, leaders, and entrepreneurs get better at what they do.